Welcome to Calming the Chaos podcast, where we help you find peace in a chaotic world. I'm your host, Tracy Canella, licensed mental health counselor. Calming the Chaos provides self-help resources for people in crisis. It's not a substitute for counseling or psychotherapy. Thanks for tuning in. And now, let the chaos begin. Well, I'm on my lunch hour and I'm streaming. Isn't that wild? Did you ever think that would happen? No, I did not. And so I'm completely out of my element, and it's a little chaotic for me right now, but I thought I would just sort of wrap up the Crumbleys. And I hope that people can hear me because I don't think I have any mods. This was kind of spur of the moment sort of thing. And I cannot hear myself because I have muted myself. And if I unmute myself, then I will hear myself double and it will drive myself nuts. So if this comes out all muted, then so be it. I will delete it. But I do want to go over what we have learned from this trial of Jennifer Crumbley, because I think there's a lot of lessons that we've learned. And I've put my top 10 down here, and I'm just going to go through them really fast and see if you agree. If not, then great. But here's what, from a mental health counselor's perspective, I think we've learned from watching the trial, from hearing the stories, from hearing the testimonies of Jennifer Crumbley. Okay, lesson number 1, parenting is difficult. And I think a lot of questions about parenting come up in this trial. A lot of emotions come up, woulda, coulda, shoulda, and pointing fingers at people. But I also think that people do understand that parenting is difficult. I have been told that I'm not allowed to comment on parenting because I myself am not a parent, but I have dealt with parents in my private practice, and I've seen the pain on their faces. I've seen the stuff that their kids go through. And I know I'm not a parent, but I was a kid with parents. And so I know a little bit about parenting. So I do believe that I am allowed to speak on parenting, that it is not an easy job. As they say, they don't come with an instruction manual. The second lesson is that kids sometimes have mental health problems. So just as parenting is difficult, kids sometimes come up with mental health problems, whether they be biological, psychological, or psychosocial. Marshall Linehan has the theory of the biopsychosocial theory. And so all of these things can affect mental health, biology, what's passed down from your genes, what happens to you in your life, and what happens to you in the world. So sometimes kids come up with mental health problems. And then lesson number 3 is that parents don't always see the signs of mental health problems. And they may not know what's going on with their kids at all. Sorry, I'm reading from notes. So parents may not see the signs, and they may not know what's going on. They may not be searching their kids' backpacks. They may not be reading their journals. They may be talking to them every so often, but the kid may be hiding stuff. We just know that that's true. And that's a lesson that we really learned during this trial. And then the fourth lesson is that sometimes parents they do see that there are problems, but they don't act. They don't receive counseling, or they receive some advice from a school counselor and they don't act upon it right away. They may not believe that counseling will do any good, or that even taking the kid home will do them any good. But so sometimes they do see, but they don't act. And then sometimes they do see and they do act, but they act aversively, abusively. I believe there were some references, and I'm not sure that they're true. Suck it up, take a pill. Those sorts of invalidating comments can be made to kids who have mental health problems, and parents do see behaviorally maybe they're stealing stuff, or they're doing really badly in school, or getting in trouble because they're stealing stuff. And so, but they may treat them like aversively or abusively. So there's that lesson that we learned. We also learned that public school counselors have a high caseload. They are seeing 400 plus students on their caseload. They're all divided up. And so they can't catch everything. Those counselors are relying a lot of the times on the teachers, which goes into my next lesson. Or my lesson that I learned is that some of these teachers at Oxford High were very vigilant. And, I don't know who the teacher was who took a picture of that math paper that Ethan drew, but that was quick thinking. And there have been evidence that teachers have been really well involved and informing the school counselor. I just have to really say that teachers really can be so vigilant, and I'm very grateful. I have several teachers that I work with and have worked with over the years on my counseling caseloads. They give their hearts and their souls to their jobs, and sometimes they miss things, but they are vigilant. And then sometimes school counselors can miss things, right? Or maybe not ask the right questions. I think I referred to this in one of my videos, is that we as counselors will ask, okay, well, we see this drawing. So what are you thinking? How are you feeling? And what are your intentions of doing? We also ask if we think that there's a suicide threat, if there is a plan, and if there's an intent, and if you have the means to do it. The question of whether Ethan possessed a gun was not asked by the school counselor, and it was not offered by the parents. And that's my 9th thing that I learned, is that it's not uncommon for parents not to offer back information. I guess that was number 8. Sorry, I lost count. This is a live stream, so be forgiving, okay? And so, yeah, sometimes parents don't offer the information. And then what is the counselor supposed to do with that? School counselor and the dean of students, what are they supposed to do that if the parents don't offer information that we just bought him a gun 4 days ago that looks like the one that's drawn on the piece of paper, right? So we've learned that it's not uncommon also, and I believe this is number 9, for parents to buy firearms for kids. It's not uncommon and it's not illegal. They can buy firearms for kids, and they can teach them how to use firearms. As adults, they can teach kids how to use firearms and safely, hopefully at a range. And that's the parent's responsibility to be able to do that safely. But it is not, in my opinion, a gun issue per se. It was more the reasonable care issue. And then very lastly, okay, I have already talked about the parent to teacher information exchange. So I put that down twice, but here's a bonus, okay? This is another thing that I learned that I thought was really interesting, is that I cannot predict things that are going to happen in a trial, because when all the information was in, I thought, well, as a juror on this trial, I would vote in a guilty verdict. And I'll tell you why. Because to a reasonable person, it must have been apparent that the result was likely to be serious injury if there hadn't been some sort of intervention. So yes, Jennifer Crumbley did not know that her son would shoot up the school, but she did fail to exercise ordinary care. And that's the problem I have. And then listening to this morning's commentary by one of the, I think it was the jury foreman, that the real clincher for them was the fact that Jennifer was the last one being seen use the gun and was an adult. That was the clincher for them. For me, it was the drawing. And seeing that drawing, the parents could have connected the dots and at least taken him out of school. Ordinary care in this case would have been to at least take your kid home. You don't have to take him to the hospital, but at least take him home, talk to him, find out. Somebody would have at least talked to him about it, right? Taken him home. And then follow up with that recommendation to get a counselor to talk to him as well. Maybe take a little bit more care with the firearm. And so for me, that was what, as a juror, I would have said. So how I predicted that the trial would turn out was I thought that first, I thought it was going to be a not guilty verdict. Then the jury didn't come back the first day. And I thought, it's probably going to be a hung jury. So I've gone on record as saying I would vote guilty. I think there's going to be a hung jury. And I was actually on the Lawyer You Know's channel when we were all voting about, is it going to be a hung jury? And I had pushed the hung jury, and then a verdict came down. And so it's like, whoop, I'm automatically wrong. There's going to be a guilty or a not guilty verdict there. And I'm going to be wrong with my hung jury theory. So I went back and I thought, well, I think they're going to come back with a not guilty verdict. And I think the reason why I thought so is because Michigan is a big gun state. The region that they're in is, very much about guns. And I thought that they would go to the gun aspect of the trial, and that reasonable doubt could have existed about the care of the gun and this and that and the other thing, right? But I was surprised. So those are the things that I learned from watching this trial, and the mental health things. There was so many emotions flying through that courtroom. There were parents in there, victims who were scared. And then after the verdict was read, they felt better, but that doesn't bring their kids back, right? It doesn't undo the damage. And then I saw, these emotions of anger, sadness, and all the stuff come out in the courtroom that had to do with the images that they've seen and the things that they've experienced. And some of them behaved, I think, when you look at the players, the audience really behaved very well, except for some annoying coughing, which I don't know. There's something about coughing that I really don't like. And that's just a me thing. But the audience didn't do a whole lot of reacting. And I thought that was great. So what happens next? As I said, some of the victims feel better. Some of the victims feel that justice was served. And then I was, of course, as I usually do, driving home last night from work and listening to Scott Reich on Crime Talk. And I caught about the first 20 minutes of his 60-minute rant. I love Scott. I love Frank. I love that channel. I always listen to it on the way home. And I ended up listening to the whole thing. And he went on a 60-minute rant. I don't have my notes clearly set up right now underneath this video because this was just such a spontaneous video that I'm doing. But I will put a link to his live stream last night where he went the very first 60 minutes. He was going on this tirade. And what he was doing was, I love his rants, by the way. He was ranting about, well, now we're going to have to lock up our baseball bats and our knives and all these new precedents are going to be set. And he was, I thought, catastrophizing. I actually made a comment under his video, said, now, come on now, I love you, but I think you're catastrophizing a little bit. Yeah, maybe prosecutors will be a little less shy about bringing these things up about parents and when kids do crimes. But this was an extreme case that I really do believe that it was, it has so many elements that just all fit together for this guilty verdict that I just don't believe that we're going to go overboard and say, well, lock up your knives, lock up your baseball bats, because seriously, I mean, I can throw this pencil. I think he even used that example of like, oh, you can't really use pencils anymore because you're going to stab somebody in the eyeball or something like that. And that's really not what I think is going to happen. But I tend to be an optimist. Jennifer Crumbley will definitely appeal, and James Crumbley goes to trial next month in March, and then Jennifer will be sentenced on April 9th. So in conclusion, I would say some of the takeaways here that we have learned and maybe going forward could practice would be to take reasonable care. And that means observe your kids, listen to your kids, heck, listen to each other. Provide reasonable care to each other. I think I've been saying this for years, maybe even since starting this channel, that if we were just more observant and more inquisitive, less judgmental, noticing and acting upon potential mental health issues and challenges. I do have a video that I did probably last year that talks about recognizing true crime, red flags, looking out for some red flags, being thoughtful. And then I also did an interview with Dr. Saul, which I'll link to below as soon as I get done doing the live stream. I'll link it below. That talks about being good citizens, just being a good citizen in this world. And that's what I'm going to leave you with. A 16-minute live stream. Tracy Canella has never done that before. And rock on with me, because if this comes out, this will be a first, and I will have learned something new too. And hopefully you did. I wanted to wrap this up because the next, this is February, and I was planning on doing all of my videos in February about love, because Valentine's Day is our nation's day of love and all that stuff. And I will be doing those. And that's one of the reasons I'm doing it live today, is because I don't want to have to be editing a video. I'm going to be editing my love videos. We're going to be having somebody talk about breakups. We're going to be having somebody talk about an app for a love app for shy people. We're going to have people who are going to come on and talk about jealousy, and I'm going to do some fun stuff in between. And as I'm talking about that, oh my gosh, that sounds like so much work. That's my intention. We'll see how it works out. In the meantime, everybody out there, just take care. And thanks again for listening to Calming the Chaos.
Thanks for listening to Calming the Chaos podcast. If you found this podcast interesting or helpful, please like, subscribe, and share it with your friends. You can also go to www.calmingthechaospodcast.com to listen to all Calming the Chaos podcast episodes. I look forward to sharing my next podcast episode with you. In the meantime, take care.
Howl at the moon or something like that.